Hello everyone and welcome back to the Spellbook, your guide to the Commander format. Today, we're going to look at one of my favorite decks that I use when playing with my friends, my Vampire Madness deck, helmed by the Commander Anje Falkenrath. For this, we're going to take a closer look at our Commander, then we'll take a look at the deck, including any ramp, removal, and what some of the strongest cards in the deck are. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Before we get into the deck, I'm going to explain what the Madness effect means, since it's what a large chunk of the deck is built around. Madness is a keyword on spells that allows a player to cast that spell for alternate cost if the card is discarded. While it is a simple definition, this can become incredibly important later on. Now that that's out of the way, let's look at our commander herself.
Our commander is Anje Falkenrath, a 1/3 legendary vampire that costs 1 colorless mana, 1 black, and 1 red with haste. Her first effect says that she can tap and discard a card so you can draw a card. Her second effect says that whenever we discard a card, if it has Madness, we untap her. This means that whenever we put a card that has the Madness keyword into our graveyard from our hand, we essentially get another use of her ability. This helps us do two things. One, it lets us filter through our deck faster, and two, it lets us cast something for cheaper depending on its Madness cost. Some cards have effects that activate when you pay this alternative cost, which is an extra bonus. But to even get to the cool stuff, let's look at what can get us there. The deck's ramp package. Our ramp in this deck is primarily artifact based. Of course, you get everyone's favorite commander staple, Soul Ring, alongside Charcoal and Fire Diamond, Arcane Signet, Rakdos Signet, and Commander Sphere. All of these allow us to tap for extra mana. However, there are three other cards that help with getting your resources to stay competitive with our opponents. Scion of Opulence is a 3/1 vampire noble that says that whenever it or another vampire dies, create a treasure token. You can also pay 1 red and sack 2 artifacts to exile the top 2 cards of your deck, and you can play them that turn. The second effect is Desperation Draw for us, for the most part. Her first effect is where she really shines. This is a creature-based deck, so your creatures may die often. Might as well get some extra mana stockpiled just in case. The other 2 cards will be discussed later, as they help us in other ways besides getting us extra resources. Our removal is a mixture of instant sorceries and creatures. Rakdos Charm is a favorite due to its flexibility and low mana cost, alongside Feed the Swarm and Vandal Blast. Abyssin's Judgment makes an appearance and is one of the aforementioned Madness cards, meaning that if we cast it that way, we can essentially choose how much damage we can do to any target on the board depending on how much mana we dump into it. However, we also have creatures like Markov Enforcer, Patron of the Vein, and Anawan the Rune Sage. Markov Enforcer says that whenever it or a vampire enters the battlefield, it fights another target creature, meaning they could potentially kill multiple creatures a turn if you start getting out multiple vampires every turn. Patron of the Vein kills a creature as it enters the battlefield, and every time a creature an opponent controls dies, they get exiled, and our vampires get a +1/+1 counter. Meaning that when our opponent's creatures die, they essentially leave the game forever while he's on the board, and they permanently buff our creatures. Anawan the Rune Sage says that on our upkeep step, everyone sacrifices a non-vampire creature. This isn't an issue for us, since 99% of our creatures are vampires, but it will assuredly kneecap our opponents. Unless our opponents are also running vampires, but at least in my experience, that very rarely happens. Now that we've talked about what we can do to our opponent's stuff, let's touch on our best cards in the deck before we touch on some stats and some pros and cons. Our 3 best cards in this deck are Falkenrath Gorger, Olivia Crimson Bride, and Sorin Imperious Bloodlord. Falkenrath Gorger is a 1 mana vampire that gives all vampires in the deck Madness, essentially letting us wield through our deck as long as we have creature cards to discard. Olivia allows us to bring back a card from the graveyard when she attacks, and Sorin is a Planeswalker card that can buff our creatures, deal damage to other creatures and our opponents while giving us life, and allows us to put any vampire card in our hand onto the field. All of these allow us to swarm our field with vampires, which leads to our basic win condition, which is punching everything that moves. Stat-wise, this deck has an average mana cost of 3.74, meaning we need at least 3 mana sources to play most cards. Vampire creatures take up about one-third of our deck, and in terms of cost, the deck's entire value is $150.02, most of which is from Sorin Imperious Bloodlord, who has only been printed twice, and recently has had a massive price spike due to its popularity in a different format. Honestly, this deck was made purely for fun. It's aggressive, allows for big plays, and allows you to viciously maul your opponents and look good while doing it. However, it is creature based, meaning you are susceptible to board wipes and to other lockdown effects. On top of this, red only has a small number of counter spells, and black has literally none, meaning that you're usually only doing stuff on your turn. You don't have a lot of non removal based interaction. Overall, if you love vampires, love fast gameplay, and love putting claws to face, this is the perfect deck for you. Hey, thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you want to see more of the deck, click the Architect link in the description below. If you haven't already, remember to like, subscribe, and to click the bell notification to be notified for my next video. Next, we move on from one undead monster to another as we take on Verena the Lich Queen. See you next time.